All right, South Carolina football led by one of the most hyped quarterbacks in college football this season, Lenore Sellers. They sat right on the fringe of the playoffs last season, had a great year, finished really, really strong. Now coming into this year, expectations are right there for them to make the playoffs, sit right there and hopefully make them this year. The question is, though, looking at this team, is Sellers enough for this team to win the SEC? Does he have enough around him, and does he have enough capability within himself to take this team to that spot?
Yeah, and I think it's a fair question. It's a question that, we work together to pose because they're losing a lot. They're obviously losing Rocket Raheem Sanders from last season, finished fourth in the SEC when it came to rushing. And this defense lost 7 players to the NFL. That this defense is very much going to be a lot different this year. So offensively, I'm curious what, Lenore Sellers is going to be able to do to offset what's missing on offense from last season, and can his game elevate enough to ultimately take them to the promised land, winning the SEC?
Yeah. Personally, I'm not super high on the offense for a few reasons. I like Lenore Sellers. I think he's extremely talented, great on the ground. He's made some great plays throughout the season. I think he could have won that LSU game and put them in the playoffs, no problem. That the defense, though, on the other side, they kept them in a lot of these games. The Clemson game, especially, defense played lights out in that.
Yeah.
It was a 2-part team that was really good on both sides of the ball, especially defense. Defense did their fair share of carrying games. They won't have that this year. I don't think it will be even close to the same level. You mentioned losing Raheem Sanders, and at this point, recording on August 4th, who they expect to probably be their number one running back is still not cleared to play in the games this season. They brought in Rasul Faizan from Utah State. He just got cleared to practice, but he's still not cleared for games. So it's still up in the air on what the running game is going to look like at this point.
Yeah, and that looked like a really good pickup, right? I mean, he ran for over 1,000 yards the last 2 seasons, right? So, for over 2,000 plus yards, he's going to be a major player. Their backup running back from last year, I think he eclipsed maybe 400 yards. So you'd have to see a pretty significant leap on the ground. Honestly, Lenore Sellers kind of carried. He was 600. He had 600 yards last season. Raheem Sanders had over 800 yards from last season. Raheem, obviously, we talked about, he's not coming back. So it's a lot to ask of Sellers to be potentially your leading rusher and throw the football and of course, take the hits that he's going to be taking. He finished last season top 10 in the SEC when it came to passing yards, over 2,500 yards. His challenge, and I know you talked about it, was possessing the football.
Yeah. A lot of fumble issues. A lot of the turnovers were early on. He did great, not throwing picks. 11 turnovers, most in the country. 11 fumbles, sorry, most in the country. They finished with a positive turnover margin, but they still put the ball on the ground almost 2 times per game. There's only a few teams worse than them in the country on that, and they all came from the SEC with Oklahoma, Kentucky, and Arkansas. But putting the ball on the ground 2 times a game is not a recipe for success. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and chalk that up to, first year, the jitters that come along with that. I think that will all be improved. Where I'm struggling on the offense to see is explosiveness. Where does the explosiveness come from? Where does the big playmaking come from? Because last season, there really wasn't a lot of that aside from him and Raheem Sanders to be able to really break out big plays. Now, don't come for me in the comments. I know there were some big plays that they had here and there, big ones against Alabama. But, as for, we'll talk about a little bit about yards after catch. Their best YAC receiver, yards after catch receiver, was DeLe'Veon Campbell, and he was 287th in the country in yards after catch. They weren't getting guys open in space. They weren't having big breakaway plays. I don't know where that explosiveness, where the big plays are going to come from that a lot of other teams are seeing success with.
And that's going to be what's going to be required when it comes to winning these games, right? You're going to need a big play offense. You're going to need to outscore some teams. Like last season, the defense carried a lot, but when they played some tougher opponents, the Missouri game, it was, I think, 36-33. The defense gave up a good amount of points. They lost that game. When they played, of course, the A&M game, the defense played well. It was 44-20, but there still was a good amount of points given up. So if this defense is not as good as last year, which the bar was set very high, you bring back Dylan Stewart, they bring back Peyton Williams at safety from last year. this defense is not as good as last year potentially, you're going to need those explosive plays.
Yeah.
Where does it come from? Maybe Nick Harbor takes a bigger leap this year. You think that potentially, Lenore Sellers takes a larger leap this year. There's a reason why the SEC media thinks he'll be the second best quarterback. Is the second best quarterback for what Lenore Sellers' capabilities has shown enough for the team success to get them to where they want to go? That's kind of been the crux for South Carolina for a while. 9-4 last year is one of their best records they've had in the last 6 years. Can they do more this year to get into Atlanta is really the question.
Yeah, I mean, the deep ball last year was good the few times that they used it. He only threw over 20 yards on 13% of his passes, on 13% of his dropbacks, sorry. So if you got someone like Nick Harbor, extremely fast, now committed completely to football, not running track anymore, get him open downfield, big guy. It worked in some games. They're going to need to get that going.
Yeah.
Now, is it enough? That depends a lot on the opponents that they're going to be playing. So to take a look at their schedule, I would like to see this team 5-0 going into bye week and going into LSU. Really, the only big holdups there, Virginia Tech, neutral site. Don't know too much about what they're going to look like this year. You'll play at Missouri. They shouldn't be as good as last year, and they still had South Carolina. They weren't like great last year, and I think they're going to be worse. You play Vanderbilt, you play Kentucky. So the South Carolina team needs to start out 5-0.
Yeah, and I was Phil Steele. I think he kind of has them starting off 5-0, and similarly, he's like, it's after that 5-game stretch where things get interesting. So you look past that, you're going to LSU. They're coming for blood. They lost last year. You have Oklahoma coming to you. It's not going to be 37-9 probably this year. Oklahoma seemingly has some offense this year, so you're going to have to score in that game. You have Bama coming to you, and you're going to Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss could be a win there. I have them losing to Bama.
I mean, there's a 5-game stretch here that's very hard. LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, Ole Miss, and A&M. That's the whole season right there. Depending on what happens there, because depending on your business there is whether you make the SEC game or not.
Yeah.
And then you have Clemson to kind of be your playoff resume builder, which was their playoff resume builder last season, and it still wasn't enough for them at 9-3. So this year, do I think that he has the pieces? Do I think that he is good enough to get them to the playoffs? I think he has enough to get them to where they were last year. I don't know if it's enough to get them in the playoffs. It was spotty based on other teams. South Carolina could have easily been in the playoffs last year, depending on who you asked. But they did.
And I look, I'm in the same boat as you. I think he's talented enough to get him there. I think that it really just depends how they play. I mean, I'll go out and say it. I have them losing to Vandy week 3, but going forward, I expect them to be able to ball out a little bit. I would have liked to see them make a bigger splash in the portal, or I'm expecting some guys on the roster to step up that have not played from last season.
Yeah, I mean, they did bring in Aaron Nolan, who I think will be a better backup should Sellers get hurt, like we saw last year, where they had to bring in Ashford for a couple games. They do got something there. But I have this team 9-3, 8-4. I think they still sit right on the outside. I don't think that they're there for the playoff. I think that the hype is there. I think it's going to be tough to live up to. I hope it's not like Nick Saban used to say, the rat poison for the team. I hope that they're not seeing the hype and that's going to impact their performance. I think they're sitting right on the outside of the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it is a talented roster, and so we're both on the same page here. But we want to know what you think, right? And it's the preseason, so things change. We'll see how the season goes, but let us know what you think here, South Carolina fans of the SEC. If you like content like this, follow, subscribe, and thank you for tuning in. It's a new SEC podcast. Randall Odette Jr. We got Hunter Ziesman.